us all weekend are debating the why behind it. Why did he slip? Is it because of the who? Is it because of the what? I just want to say one thing. If he was drafted by the Cleveland Browns, number 3 overall on Thursday night, or 2 overall, on Thursday night when they had the pick, or 5 overall when they traded out, most of us would be celebrating this.
Yes.
So if people want to say they don't know what they're doing, it could be the owner that picked him. They picked Dylan Gabriel first. So be it. They got Shedeur Sanders in the 5th round of the NFL draft, 144 overall. That is a good pick any way you slice it. I don't care what happened before then. I don't care who made the pick, and I don't care what other quarterbacks are on the roster by way of draft or free agency. They got a guy that is beyond worth the risk at 144. People would have CC would have come in on Friday to our show at the Tundra Trio in Green Bay and said, wow, they picked up a 26 first and they got Shedeur at 5. I like that draft. This man played 11 years in the NFL and won a Super Bowl. He would have liked it at 5. How could we not like it in the 5th round?
Oh, it was a no-brainer move for the Cleveland Browns in the 5th round. It is so low risk, potentially high reward for a team that is still in search of their future quarterback. It was a no-brainer move for Cleveland to grab him in the 5th round. And I know heading into this draft, we had more variance on Shedeur Sanders and his prospect evaluation than any player in this draft. Some people thought he was the best quarterback in this draft. Some people thought that he wasn't worth taking a flyer on. We had a lot of variance on him. Some of it was about his skill set translating to the professional ranks. A lot more of it was about him as a person and about his family dynamic and his dad. And I think what we learned as we watched round after round get completed and Shedeur Sanders' name not be called, I think what we learned is that his father's influence and those bad interviews that he allegedly had with some of these teams carried a lot of weight. And that when these teams were deciding whether or not Shedeur Sanders was a good fit for them, those outside influences were hugely impactful in the way that they viewed him.
Agreed.
I'm not saying it's right.
No,
I'm saying
agreed.
it was influential.
You said something there and it just triggered a thought. You said his father's influence. Are we sure it's Deion's influence or Deion's reputation when he was a player? Because I'm not sure which one is which. Like, Deion doesn't have a negative influence on the game of football.
This is so
He's
ridiculous.
only been positive for football when he's been Coach Prime. What he did at Jackson State, what he's doing at Colorado, it is a net positive for the game of football.
Of course.
And it benefits the NFL because you're talking about the 2 biggest stars discussed over draft day weekend happen to come out of his program at Colorado. Like they showed it. This was the most televised second day of the draft since 2020, when the draft happened a month into the pandemic and nobody had anything else to watch. It was because people were tuning in to see where Shedeur Sanders would fall after not getting drafted night 1. That was the headline the entire weekend. This was dubbed the Shedeur Sanders draft. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how Deion's influence could be a negative and how that's detrimentally impacting where teams view Shedeur in terms of where he should be drafted. Now, conversely, when Deion was a player, there's the infamous story pre-draft about when the Giants wanted him to sit down and do an interview. They handed him the personality test where Deion looked at it and said, this is the biggest book I've ever seen, and refused to do it because the Giants were picking 10th, and Deion said he'd be off the board by then. There was that brashness. There was that confidence, and it was off-putting to a lot of talent evaluators. But guess what? Deion's talent was undeniable. In this instance, when so much of the quarterback position and the evaluation of the signal callers comes down to the intangibles, they've somehow used that swagger and weaponized it against Shedeur Sanders. And it feels like this is one of the only instances where we knock a kid at the quarterback spot for having a ton of confidence. Here's what I don't get about what happened to Shedeur over the weekend. We've had so many different talent evaluators come on our show throughout the pre-draft process, whether it's Matt Miller, whether it's Phil Yates, Mel Kiper Jr., Jordan Reed, all of them do a phenomenal job. Shout out to them. They were awesome this weekend during the broadcast. All of them had Shedeur Sanders as a top 25 prospect in this draft. So when we talk about the variance around Shedeur, let's contextualize that. It was the number 5 prospect or the number 25 prospect, someplace in between that range. Nobody had Shedeur as a 5th-round draft pick. Our ESPN analytics gave it less than a 3% chance that Shedeur would be there in round 2. So how is it that discrepancy, that disparity in terms of where the tape said he should be drafted versus where he actually came off the board? Maybe we'll never know the answer to that, but I said this on Friday and I'll say it again. Shedeur Sanders not being picked in the first 2 days has nothing to do with his ability to play football. Stephen A. compared it to Colin Kaepernick in a way. It's eerily similar to what happened with Lamar Jackson when he was franchise tagged and how teams were scrambling to say that they weren't interested in trying to trade for him or sign him to an offer sheet. It's one of those anomalies that happens in the NFL that you can't quite put a finger on it exactly why it's happening, but collectively, the league is making some type of statement. And so without character assassinating anybody, without casting aspersions, I would just say to the folks out there, this doesn't make sense at all from a football standpoint. And last thing I'm going to say, if you found yourself celebrating Shedeur Sanders sliding into the 5th round, if you were happy about that, you need to ask yourself why. Because there's something sick about that.
There's a lot more to do with this.
Yeah, there's a lot
There
more.
were 4 quarterbacks drafted ahead of him. He was the 5th quarterback taken. He was in the 5th round. He's in a spot now that could be happy ever after.
Oh, he's going to get an opportunity.
Maybe he just wins the job. We will discuss. There's a lot more, obviously, on the greatest slide in the history of the NFL draft coming up. We're on Sportsmanlike, presented by Progressive Insurance.
Unsportsmanlike.
Nhảy về đây có ổn định bao giờ đâu.
Không muốn đi đâu nhưng mà
Cháu rằng mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay mình sẽ tiếp tục hướng dẫn các bạn làm
ra vẽ xong
vòng quả nho bên
kem
này.
xanh
Bắt
thì
đầu
các bạn
là
ơi, qua cái hai cái kênh 3 đồng hồ về nha.
thịt võ mồm với đà. Thế để chị gọi ý kiến vào đây. Nghe thì đi không đi này.
Ngồi chứ. Ngồi đây đi. Tạm thời tháng này không tiêu tiền cũng được.
Mày có tiền nhiều thì mày đi vớ vẩn đi mình áp lương hỏng. Mày có tiền
Tầm 2 triệu đi sáng tối về còn thì 600. Chào các